Central American countries continue to feel the effects of Tropical Storm Bonnie. In India, the fatalities from a landslide that occurred in late June in the eastern state of Manipur rose to 42. Ecowas leaders decided to lift economic and financial sanctions imposed on Mali and Burkina Faso after a 24-month transition to democracy was agreed in both nations. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Tropical Storm Bonnie became a Category 1 hurricane this Sunday night off the Mexican Pacific coast, threatening to bring heavy rains to most of the southwestern part of the country. In its latest report, the United States National Hurricane Center reported that Bonnie was located some 335 kilometers south of the commercial and oil port of Salina Cruz in the Mexican state of Oaxaca, with maximum sustained winds of 130 kilometers per hour, while moving in a west-northwesterly direction at a speed of 28 kilometers per hour. According to forecasts, the hurricane could continue strengthening in the following hours until it reaches Category 2 on Monday. In China, 27 people are still missing after a ship was ripped in two by a typhoon in the South China Sea. Rescue efforts are still underway following the incident occurred on Saturday. Teams managed to rescue at least 3 of the crew members of the ship, which sank 300 kilometers off coast. According to survivors' testimonies, other crew members could have been swept away by the waves before the arrival of the first helicopter. The event is the result of Typhoon Chavas crossing through the region, sparking winds of up to 144 kilometers per hour and 10-meter high waves. In India, the fatalities from a landslide that occurred in late June in the eastern state of Manipur rose to 42. The National Disaster Response Force reported that 34 bodies have been recovered so far, in addition to the 8 dead bodies found in the Nonne district. Rescue teams from other regions have been deployed in the area to reinforce rescue tasks, together with other state and national security forces, due to the difficult terrain. The landslide occurred on the night of June 29th to the 30th, hitting an Indian Army camp that was protecting the construction of a railroad in the Nonne district. In Italy, the Ministry of Health declared a red alert in 20 of the 27 major cities due to the heat wave registered in the Apennines. According to a ministry bulletin, the measure includes Rome and the administrative centers of Naples, Florence, Bologna, Bari, Trieste, and Reggio Calabria, where up to 40 degrees Celsius are registered. According to local meteorologists, this heat wave brings with it high humidity, solar radiation, and intense sweltering. It was caused by 3 anticyclones, Hannibal, Scipio, and Huron, which brought in huge masses of warm air from Africa. However, meteorologists predict that this will gradually diminish and cooler air will arrive in the north and center of the country. In Italy, an avalanche sparked by the collapse of the largest glacier in the Italian Alps killed at least 6 people and injured 8 others. The glacier collapsed on the mountain of Marmolada, the highest in the Italian Dolomites, near the village of Punta Rocca. The disaster struck after a record high temperature of 10 degrees Celsius was recorded at the glacier's summit. 6 people had been confirmed dead and 8 were injured. 2 of the injured were taken to a hospital. Another in a more serious condition was taken to Treviso and 5 to Trento. Helicopters were scrambled to take part in the rescue operation and to monitor the situation from the air. Rescuers had deployed all their alpine teams. On Sunday, water levels were receding in major rivers in Bangladesh's northeast region, but the city of Sylhet, which was badly hit by the floods, remained partially submerged. The flooding displaced hundreds of thousands, and roads leading to Sylhet and Sunamganj were largely cut off after torrential monsoon rain last month. According to official figures, more than 100 people have died since the mid-May floods. Thousands of families continue to live in temporary shelters, and many have lost their cattle and other belongings. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies said more than 7 million people in Bangladesh are in desperate need of shelter and emergency relief. Bangladesh is considered one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change.
We are living in the water. I keep my cattle at another house. We are in a helpless condition. There is no road to use. We have to walk in waist-deep water. We have rented a house with extra rent to save ourselves and keep the cattle at another house. That one also has submerged.
In Suriname, the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, will participate in the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, in Paramaribo. According to his spokesperson office, his participation in this conference covers the agenda of his second day in the country. He is expected to highlight in his opening speech the need to unite strong solutions to climate change. During his first day, Guterres met with representatives of indigenous peoples and members of agricultural cooperatives. Guterres will meet with the President of Suriname, Chan Toki, and other senior local authorities. In Suriname, the 43rd regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community takes place in Paramaribo. The opening ceremony was held at the Assuran Event Center, in which were present newly elected Prime Minister St. Lucia Philip Davis, CARICOM Secretary General Dr. Carla Bennett, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, among others. During the summit, the heads of government will examine agenda items such as advancing the CARICOM agri-food systems agenda, climate finance, security issues, and an update on COVID-19 and other emergency issues. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In Bolivia, President Luis Arce called on social organizations to consolidate unity to face the rearticulation of right-wing sectors that promoted the coup d'etat of 2019. The head of state made this exhortation during his speech at the second meeting of the Union Confederation of Native Intercultural Communities of Bolivia, held in the city of Cobija, in the department of Pando. In this activity, he warned that the right wing that promoted the coup of the then President Evo Morales is trying to rearticulate. Therefore, he called for reflection to the social organizations to understand the national reality, emphasizing the importance of maintaining the unity of all social sectors in the face of foreign interests that would try to divide and cause social destabilization in the nation. Three months before Brazil's presidential elections, former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva held a massive campaign rally this Saturday in Salvador de Bahia. Lula led a walking procession through Largo da La Piña neighborhood to celebrate the independence anniversary of Bahia State. Afterwards, several hundreds of people welcomed him at a meeting in the Fonte Nova Stadium parking lot, where the former president delivered half-an-hour speech. During his speech, Lula highlighted the resistance of Brazilian people and called on the audience to commit themselves with the future of the country. In Venezuela, the 21st edition of the LGBTIQ+ Pride March was held this Sunday. Citizens took to the streets of Caracas to honor the struggles of the diverse sex-gender community in Venezuela. Under the slogan "No More, No Less, Equal Rights," participants turned out en masse for a demonstration that traveled from east to west of the capital city. During the event, activists called for an end to hate speech against the group, as well as the implementation of measures to protect the nation's LGBTIQ+ community. In Denmark, police authorities reported several dead and several wounded after gunfire in a Copenhagen mall on Sunday. Danish police added that they had arrested a 22-year-old ethnic Dane, but said it was too early to establish a motive Police reinforcements were deployed around the large Fields Mall in the Amager district between the city center and the airport. The attack occurred 2 days after the year's Tour de France cycling competition started from Copenhagen. Witnesses quoted by local media described how the suspect had tried to trick people by saying his weapon was a fake one to get them to approach. Other witnesses said they had seen more than 100 people rush towards the mall's exits as the first shots were fired. China's State Councilor and Minister of Foreign Affairs Wang Yi is in Myanmar to begin a tour that will take him to 5 Southeast Asian countries. The Chinese Foreign Minister's tour will also include official visits to Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia, as well as participation in important regional meetings. During his stay in Myanmar, he is expected to share a meeting of Lankan-Mekong Cooperation Mechanism with his counterparts from Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. Before starting his tour, Mr. Wang expressed that Beijing hopes to further consolidate ties with its Southeast Asian neighbors in search of common development and defense of shared interests in view of today's uncertainties in the world. Uzbekistan decreed a state of emergency in the Autonomous Republic of Karakalpakstan due to recent protests that led President Shavkat Mirziyoyev to reverse constitutional changes. In a communication issued by the authorities, it is stated that the measure will be effective as of midnight this Sunday and will be extended until August 2nd. The document adds that such decree seeks to guarantee the security of its citizens and restore the law and order in that territory. The protest began on Friday after the release of government's proposal to amend the constitution, which did not mention the sovereignty in the region, causing citizens discomfort. In response and in an attempt to calm the protests, a presidential spokesman guaranteed that the constitutional text referring to the sovereignty in the area would be respected. The Russian Defense Ministry confirmed Ukraine launched ballistic missiles against the Russian city of Belgorod, an attack that left 5 dead so far. According to the Defense Ministry's report, Kiev launched 3 Toshkayu ballistic missiles loaded with cluster rounds against the city of Belgorod. According to the authorities, all 3 missiles were intercepted in the air. However, the debris of one of the missiles hit 21 residential buildings and 40 houses. In this context, the governor of Belgorod, Vyacheslav Gladkov, reported that of the 5 victims, 3 were Ukrainian citizens. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu informed the president about the liberation of the self-proclaimed People's Republic of Lugansk territories. According to the Defense Ministry, as a result of successful military operations, the Russian Federation Armed Forces, together with the People's Militia of Lugansk, have established full control of the city of Lysychansk and a number of nearby settlements. According to the report, the territory gained in the last 24 hours represents a total area of 182 square kilometers. Lugansk Oblast is one of the 2 states that rose up against Kiev in the Donbas region, the liberation of which is one of the objectives of the Russian special operation in Ukrainian territory. We have more news coming up after the final show break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the South. This Sunday, leaders of the Economic Community of West African States lifted economic and financial sanctions imposed on Mali after its military rulers proposed a 24-month transition to democracy and published a new electoral law. Ecowas Commission President Jean-Claude Cassibrou announced borders with Mali will reopen and regional diplomats will return to Bamako. However, Cassibrou said individual sanctions and the suspension of Mali from Ecowas will continue until the return to constitutional rule. The West African leaders meeting in Accra also accepted a pledge from the junta that seized power in Burkina Faso in January to restore constitutional order in 24 months. Economic and financial sanctions on Burkina Faso were also lifted. But ECOWAS leaders rejected a 3-year transition proposed by coup leaders who seized power in Guinea in September. They told Guinea's junta to propose a new timeline by the end of July or face economic sanctions.
After discussion, the head of state took the following decision. The first decided to lift all the economic and financial sanctions that were January 9, 2022. That means essentially the closure of the border and the freeze of the financial asset. So those sanctions are lifted.
In Kenya, presidential candidates strengthened their electoral campaigns in the last month before the elections. A historical opponent supported by the outgoing president, the current vice president, and two lawyers, one of whom belongs to the Rastafarian movement, who won the elections in the East African country held on August 9th. The vote is expected to end with a duel between the two big favorites, the historical opponent Raila Odinga, leader of the Orange Democratic Movement Party, and the current vice president William Ruto. The history of electoral violence has caused much of the international community to put the spotlight on the general elections in August, as they could trigger new social conflicts. The government of Sierra Leone passed a bill that would decriminalize abortion in a country with one of the world's highest maternal mortality rates. At the 10th African Conference on Sexual Health and Rights in Freetown, President Julius Maada Bio announced that his government had unanimously endorsed a safe motherhood bill to guarantee the health of all girls and women in the country. President Maada said to be proud that the reform was passed at a time when women's rights, sexual and reproductive health rights were being overturned or threatened. The legislation will now have to be debated and voted on in Parliament. Sierra Leone's current abortion law dates back to 1861, a century before the country gained independence from Britain, and prohibits the procedure unless the mother's life is in danger.
My government has unanimously approved a safe motherhood bill This bill will include a range of critical provisions to ensure the health and dignity of all girls and women of reproductive age in this country.
Protests continue in Libya in rejection of deteriorating living conditions and political situation in the country, where two governments have been competing for power since March. Protesters gather in Tripoli, the capital city, and several other cities in western Libya, blocking roads and setting tires on fire. The protests are taking place in the midst of a serious economic situation, with fuel and bread prices rising, as well as frequent power cuts. On Friday, protesters stormed and set fire to the parliament in Tobruk, in the east of the country. Immersed in a deep crisis over a decade ago, Libya became a failed state after NATO's intervention and Muammar al-Gaddafi's government overthrow in 2011. teleSUR English continues to grow. Its signal now reaches Europe. You can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on screen are in place since July 1st, while soon versions will be implemented for the signals in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connects to us and our stories are heard in other faraway nations. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.